Hi, everybody. Welcome to Grading Student Learning in Secondary Physical Education, a session for the 2020 Iowa AFERD Virtual Convention. My name is Sarah Gietschier-Hartman, and I teach high school health and physical education at Clayton High School, which is located in a suburb of St. Louis, Missouri. I'm joined here today with two of my awesome colleagues, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Jo Bailey. I teach at DC Everest Senior High School in Western Wisconsin.
And I am Adam Metcalf, and I teach at the Avery Coonley School in Downers Grove, Illinois. It is elementary and middle school, so I'll be touching on some middle school concepts as well.
Okay, so first thing that we want to kind of center your thoughts around is the idea of meaningful physical education. So when we look at our overall overarching goals for our students in PE is that we want them to be active and for a lifetime. But we need to dig a little bit deeper and look at what our own students have said through research in terms of what for them makes an experience meaningful for them. So the work of Scott Kretschmar and Tim Fletcher, they've done a lot of work in this area, a lot of research trying to discover what are those things that really appeal to our students. The first one is improved physical competence. So if your skills are developing, you're getting better at something, you're more likely to be confident about it, and therefore you're more likely to then want to possibly participate in the future. The second thing is the personal relevance. Like, what is it that it's like, oh, that appeals to me, that means something to me, I can use it. So for us, it's what our sales pitch is for everything that we're teaching, whether it's a skill, whether it's an affect, what's in it for our students. Make sure they know that, make sure we sell it. The third thing, and this one's kind of a tricky one to plan for and often comes around when you least expect it, is delight. So if we can not so much catch our students off guard, but create experiences that make them like, wow, that was fantastic, and in a very positive way, then that's going to help. Fun. I think every single one of our students will be able to identify that things that are fun, they get that immediate joy in activity. They're more likely to want to do those again. Social interaction, we know a lot of our students have been missing out on that through recent times. But when we can create an environment where there is shared positive participation, that again elevates the experience. And then lastly, having that sweet spot of challenge, that Goldilocks zone where it's not too difficult, because then that makes people want to give up, and it's not too easy because then it's also doesn't do anything for them, but find that sweet spot for challenge. Now, that all being said, any education experience that we are providing for our students, you're not necessarily going to hit all of these areas. There will be some ebb and flow between them. But if we can use this as a lens to look through as we're planning for our students and planning for their physical education experience, then hopefully we can be working to create an experience that is going to be meaningful for our students. And then to that end, so once we've kind of, we've got that big idea, that big umbrella, then if we start thinking about backwards design. So when we look at our students and our school, our population, what is it that we want them to leave our programs or a particular grade level knowing how to do what knowledge, skills, attributes do you want them to have by the time that we're done? And to that end, we're going to talk a bit more about backwards design.
So one of the things that you want to think about when you're planning for any learning opportunities that you're going to be creating for your students is you really want to determine what are the most important things that your students need to know given the constraints that your school is dealing with. Those could be the day-to-day parameters that you have, your class sizes, your gym space, your ability to go inside or outside, whether you're team teaching, maybe you have double classes, maybe you have an enormous class, maybe you have a really tiny class. But then we also know that a lot of us are going to be under some very specific constraints this fall. So our entire presentation is really mindful of that. And so everything that we're going to share with you in this presentation allows you to work within those parameters of either teaching in person, teaching through distance learning, or teaching with some type of hybrid model. So one way that you can determine what the most important things are that you want to teach your students is you can give yourself permission to lock into just 4 to 8 things, 4 to 8 priority standards or outcomes. These are the things that you determine to be the most important. And you might have to make a really hard decision and kind of push some other stuff to the side that you go, you know what, due to the constraints within my program this year, I might have to cut some things out of my program because other things are more important at this time. Our tip, along with some advice that Shape America is pushing out to the community, is to focus more on social emotional learning at this time, focusing more on SEL things than actual skills. So not relying so much on standards 1 and 2, throwing in a little bit of standard 3, but really emphasizing standards 4 and 5 in your classes. And those work incredibly well in a secondary PE environment. And then when we think about our grading, when we're actually really turning things into a letter grade or a percentage, because at the end of the day, as teachers, we're responsible for that, right? And for many of our kids and their parents, that's what matters, right? We want all of our summative assessments to directly connect to the priority standards and the outcomes that we have determined to be important within our programs.
So I'm going to jump in here and talk a little bit about the middle school outcomes. So again, this is going to be a little bit of a shift for many of you who are used to grading on, participation or attitude or showing up on time or dressing out. But bear with us because it is really, really important that we establish our programs based on student learning. So with the middle school, the priority outcomes, and this is just a couple that I would select for a high priority, especially for this school year, is this standard 4 strand that demonstrates knowledge of rules and etiquette by self-officiating. So trying to teach these kids how to play on their own without a referee or an adult telling them what to do. And there are certain things that you can do as far as reflections or conversations to see if they are fully understanding that. As far as standard 5 go, again, this is a 7th grade outcome. Generating positive strategies, leading or following others when faced with group challenge. So are they a good teammate? Are they able to overcome setbacks? And then the third one that would be an example of one that I would choose, and this is an 8th grade outcome, would be discusses how enjoyment could be increased in self-selected physical activities. We know this year is going to be challenging, and as I hear about how we're going to be rolling out our classes, I am really struggling with how we're going to be able to introduce fun, as Joe talked about, and delight into some of the activities. So being able to let these kids sort of reflect on, okay, what makes something fun, I think is a high priority. If you can, and this is an example of a course description that has some of the other outcomes that I would choose. But again, if I were to select anything from standard 1, it would be, again, something that would show like a self-selection. So giving student choice in that. And again, same thing with standard 2, something that gives them autonomy and then really hitting hard on those SEL ideas. So for middle school, that would be the outcomes that I would choose.
So when we're thinking about prioritizing our standards and outcomes, the suggestion from a lot of experts is to focus on 4 to 8. And we're really fortunate that we only have 5 big overarching standards. But we're really encouraging you to dig even deeper and go into the GLOs, the grade level outcomes that fall underneath those standards. So here are just 2 high school outcomes that you could choose to prioritize in your program. And so the first one is chooses an appropriate level of challenge to experience success and desire to participate in a self-selected physical activity. And the second one is selects and participates in physical activities or dance that meet the need for self-expression and enjoyment. So bringing in that delight piece like Adam and Joe have been saying. It's important to know though that the outcomes that I find to be a priority for my students in my building could be completely different than the outcomes that you deem appropriate for your school community. So just because we're suggesting these here today doesn't necessarily mean that they're the ones that you have to choose. And then in a couple of slides, I'm going to show how you can then take those outcomes and turn them into some learning opportunities for your students.
All right, so for designing learning opportunities and assessments, we're going to be taking these grade level outcomes and showing some concrete examples of what you can do to create lessons and activities that you would be able to assess. So the first thing I want to always talk about, and this is a fantastic book about the science of learning called Make It Stick. And there are three authors in this. Peter C. Brown is the main one, but the idea of perceived competence is so important. People can be taught to raise their competence by learning the skills to judge their own performance more accurately, to make their metacognition more accurate. So this is also part of, if you've heard of Hattie's influences related to student achievement, this is number 2 on his list, stated as self-reported grades. But what this really means is how good did the students feel they are currently, and where do they need to improve? So being able to be self-aware enough to know where they are with their current performance so that they can eventually build their skills to become, physically literate, and be competent and confident in that particular skill. This is really what we're striving for. Our job as teachers is to help kids and students build that confidence to exceed where they think they can get with their skill level. So here's where they are right now. Here's where they think they can get. As teachers, we want to push them beyond that. So some activities for middle school and going into high school, you can use these as well. I highly recommend picking up the new PE metrics, the 3rd edition. There are tons and tons of activities and assessments that pair nicely with the grade level outcomes that you'll be choosing. But here's just a quick example. If you were to do like a sport unit with badminton, this is a Google form, a Google quiz, where it has images and animated GIFs to show, different types of shots, so on and so forth. But I use these at the beginning of a unit to just make sure that the students know enough to play games. So in order to kind of test into the game level or the tournament or whatever we're doing, they have to have the basic knowledge. Is that going to be in their final grade? Maybe, maybe not. For some of the more basic things, it might not be tied to a grade level outcome, but some of these assessments you can use to formatively see where they're at and if they're ready for that next level. Some of the other activities, if you're looking at standards 3 with fitness knowledge and assessment and program planning, this is what I use with my 7th and 8th graders when they have experience with like, let's say a fitnessgram test. They know their fitnessgram scores, and then what are we going to do with them? Because obviously we all know that they're not going to be graded on their fitness levels, but they can set goals. And we talk about SMART goals and how to measure them. But this is just a quick little goal setting, a primary goal, secondary goal, and they are working on this for X amount of weeks. Maybe for 6 weeks, they 1 day a week or maybe 2 days a week, they're really focusing on implementing their program. Personal responsibility, self-expression, and enjoyment. This is a really nice, it's called the Play Self-Assessment. And this is a good one to use at the beginning of the year because each student, when they fill it out, it tells you a little bit about how they feel about their own abilities. And I've just chosen, a handful of the questions from the Play Self-Assessment. And then you can tie in reflections. You can see that my reflection questions have the standard or the grade level outcome right at the end. So I leave that in there. And a lot of times I'll tell my students, if you see that in there, know that this is, a real portion of your grade, or what I'm assessing you on are those priority outcomes. So as far as middle school, that's a couple examples.
So here are two examples for high school that I used in my classes this spring when our school was closed that connect to the outcomes that I mentioned before. So this first one is about choosing an appropriate level of challenge. It's called Choose Your Own Path. And this assignment has directions at the top, and then there are 3 vertical columns. And within each column, there are 3 different activities. And so the students were encouraged to choose a vertical pathway to follow along. And there are built-in reflection questions in each of the boxes. So some of the activities included like doing a Dare Be workout or a workout from Fitness Blender. And then Adam, if you scroll down, there were some pieces that encouraged them to get outside and move. And then there were some that were focused on helping them with their mental health. And so there's some meditations, forest bathing, which is going outside and really immersing yourself in nature and just listening and looking at the world around you. And then at the very bottom, there's a feedback guide that we use to just give our students some feedback and let them know about their reflection and their responses. So what's cool about this assignment is that the students get to choose the level of challenge that they want to work at. Not only do they get to choose the vertical pathway that they want to follow, there's additional choices built within those pathways. So if I go onto Dare Be's website, there are over 1,400 workouts to choose from. So I get even more choice and I get to find the workout that I want to do. And if you choose a workout, there are choices within the workout of the amount of repetitions that you do, the level that you work at, how you can increase or decrease the challenge in order to make it meet your needs. So then Adam, if you go back to the presentation, we can show the second one. So the second one is called a wellness tic-tac-toe board. And this is something that we did really early on with our students in 4th quarter when we were closed. And what was cool about this assignment is that this gave us like the baseline for what our students were capable of during the school closure. And we were like, okay, either this is going to be great or it's not going to work at all. And it ended up being great and we got awesome feedback. And then we ended up using everything that we learned from this assignment throughout the rest of the quarter, giving our students choices, giving them the opportunity to reflect using a feedback thing. So this is 9 squares and there are 9 different activities on this tic-tac-toe board. Students were encouraged to pick 3 activities that would give them a winning tic-tac-toe pattern. Complete the activities, answer the reflection questions, and they had a week to do this. And the students even got to alter the activities if they wanted to. I had a few students reach out to me and ask if they could move things around based on their individual needs. Of course. So some students would like copy and paste the boxes and put them in a different order. And then I even had some students who did more than 3 activities. And what's really cool is they chose to answer the reflection questions for those additional activities, even though they knew that wouldn't do anything for their grade. It wouldn't give them any extra credit or anything like that. They just chose to do it and chose to engage in the activity.
Okay, so I've got some more high school activities to show you. And if you could click on the try something new. So again, with most, this was something again I did at home, but thinking, towards the school year, this could be done in school, this could be started at school, it could be done in a hybrid format, it could be done at home as well. But again, for each thing that I prepared for my students, I wanted to make sure they understood the why behind what it was that we were trying to do. What was the reason, what was the rationale for this particular assignment? So we'd already covered things like the FIT principle and so on, and had talked about the fact that your body adapts over time. So the idea was that you don't know what you don't know, and we're all creatures of habit. Sometimes we do the same things. Therefore, stepping a little out of that comfort zone and trying some new things can really open your eyes as to what other opportunities there are out there. Now, that being said, while I wanted my students to be active for 20 to 30 minutes per day, that wasn't the main onus. More than anything, it was the reflection, like being able to accurately say, what was it about the activity? Why did I choose it? Did I like it? Did I not like it? Because, you might try something and you might not like it, and that's absolutely fine. You may decide to tweak it. And what I found from a lot of my students is they did mention little changes or tweaks that they would make for themselves personally based on what they had tried. And again, I provided a menu for them, a document of different resources that students could possibly try for their various different opportunities as well. And if you can pop back to there we go. And the other one I want to show you was body composition. Now, again, this was something that I've done in class, and I had to adapt it to do it at home. So for this particular one, there's all sorts of different factors and things that can influence body composition. There's obviously probably the most obvious ones, which are your nutrition and your physical activity levels. But if you dig a little bit deeper, there's a ton more. So within a classroom environment, I created an activity menu for students to choose from. And this could be done if we're talking about a social distance environment in an upcoming school year. Options where students could make a choice in a small group, still say socially distance from each other and safe in that manner, but still also be working towards an end. So they would choose an activity, and then as a result of choosing an activity, they would receive some information about body composition that they could then take and kind of build up their repertoire of information and tools they could potentially use to help themselves understand and use body composition. The end piece to this was students then, and if you can pop back to the slides and let's see, could you click on that at home one? I think this will bring up the worksheet they used it at home. So for once they had discovered all the tools, and they will be linked in the slides. If you scroll down a little bit more, it was students then identifying for themselves, what would personally work for me, and also what would be most challenging for me, and why would I find that challenging? So again, you have that reflection piece and that kind of, right, how does this, what's in it for me, how is this personally relevant for me part in trying to determine tools, strategies that may or may not work for themselves in the future.
So this next section is about increasing student motivation and engagement. And so one of the ways that you can do this is by giving your students the opportunity to have a lot of choice and voice. Okay, so involving students in the process. So choice is incredibly important for our students, especially when they feel like they've been stuck at home for a really long time. So one of the ways that my department has tackled this is by using activity menus. And that tic-tac-toe board that I showed earlier was kind of an example of that. So giving the students some basic parameters to follow. Do 3 things, do 5 things, but then within that, giving them a lot of choice and a lot of variety to choose from. You can also give students the opportunity to determine how much challenge they want to add to an activity. So one of my favorite things to do with students is ask them, what did you do to increase the difficulty of this activity to make it work for you? What did you do to make it a little bit easier so that it was more fun for you? And or if you were able to redesign this workout that we did, what exercises would you add to it? Would you change the number of repetitions that I asked you to do? And then it's really great because sometimes I'll use that information in the future. Maybe 8 burpees wasn't the number they were looking for, and they were actually hoping that I gave them 12. So you can also allow students to choose how they will demonstrate their knowledge and skills. So give them the opportunity to demonstrate with the video, demonstrate with a partner. Maybe they would prefer to film what they can do at home instead of in the classroom. You could give them several different assessments to choose from, and they could pick how they would like to demonstrate their learning. I'm going to have Joe talk about collecting student feedback because that's a really valuable tool as well.
Okay, so one of the things, again, I select my outcomes, I plan lessons and assessments accordingly, but I still need that feedback from the students to find out, did we make it to where I was hoping to get to? So if Adam can just click on that Google Form survey link. So again, one of the things, and this is what I did this at the end of the school year when we were at home, but I do various things along the way as well. I wanted to recap some of the main concepts or some of the, the main 4 to 8 outcomes that I really wanted to hit hard, and remind students as to why we looked at that, and then kind of ask them, well, was this useful to you? Could you use it yourself? Do you feel confident? So even if it wasn't, they decided it's not going to help me. If they knew how to do it, okay, at least I succeeded on that part. When we looked at goal setting, again, what did we do? Why did we do it? Did the students feel that they know how to write a SMART goal, they could do it for themselves and they could work towards it? Or some other ones I've got down on there. challenged? What, you know, did I experience a right amount of challenge within this class? Yes or no? And you'll see some of the questions that I've actually asked in there do relate back to those meaningful PE kind of scenarios as well. And one thing, as you can see there, the way this is set up, I've used visuals to kind of help jog the memory for the students as well, because these are visuals that they have seen in the classroom that are also posted around as well. So for them to kind of jog their memories and go, oh, that's why we did it. And that tells me again, you know, did we gauge it right? Did we miss something? Did something else need revisiting? And so on. And then I can then take that and use it. But doing this as we're going along as well is really, really important, because then students, you know, they can help guide. It's a bit like a roadmap. You know, sometimes you need to take a diversion and spend longer on something else because either students haven't quite got it yet there, or they want to know more. And again, I asked them, you know, what worked for them, what didn't work for them, what are the suggestions do you have for me? Because, hey, we were all kind of thrown into the fire in March last year, and yeah, we've learned a lot from that.
One additional thing is that we want to give ourselves and our students the opportunity to look at outcomes more than once. So this could be as simple as readdressing things as a teacher as the year goes on, not just covering something and then never bringing it up again. And then through that, you're going to design new learning opportunities for your students, new lessons, new activities, new assessments, whether they're formative or summative, and they should start to look different so that they aren't repetitive, so that students can demonstrate their knowledge in a variety of ways.
And again, self-assessment is going to be huge. This is a couple of examples that I use for my second, third, and fourth graders, but this might be, if you're not a techie person, you could do a quick, you know, print these out. The students could fill these out with a pencil or pen. At the bottom, I love to put just a quick little self-assessment. How well do you know whatever it is? And again, this goes back to the perceived competence. If they give themselves a wow and then I give them, you know, a not yet, then that's a conversation that I need to have, because they're really, you know, they're not getting it and they don't really understand what they're not getting yet. So again, and then giving them another chance at it, again, multiple attempts at learning.
And this one was a self-assessment rubric for the trisomy that we showed earlier. So again, you know, I've made a mistake in the past where I've made this rubric and I've put it out there, and it's very evident sometimes when students submit things that they haven't actually looked at the rubric at all. So having them, or having possibly a peer, depending on the situation and the parameters that you're working with, look through it and say, okay, which of these boxes did I check off? Do I need to go back and revise? Or am I like, and what do I believe? What evidence do I believe that I have provided within this particular construct as well? So involving them and having them, you know, take that kind of critical lens, look at their own work, or perhaps help a peer look at the work as well and say, right, where are we at? Are we where we need to be? Or do we need to go back and make some changes as well? So include them as much as you possibly can in the process.
So turning assessments into grades. So creating systems for accurate and defensible grading. So, you know, the goal is to try to be objective with your assessments and grading, but as long as you're providing, you know, credible and defensible grading systems, then you're on the right track, and your students will really start to value the learning that comes with it. But first and foremost, the primary function of grading is to accurately communicate current levels of learning. So this should, all of your assessments should focus on what the student should know, understand, and be able to do. Learning is the main objective. And when you take on a standards-based approach and a grading for learning approach, the time frame doesn't necessarily need to matter. I mean, the physical literacy journey is a journey. So you need to make sure that you're giving the students a chance to fail and learn from it, and give them multiple attempts for full credit. So ways you can do this, and again, we've showed you some examples, but letting them you know, retake something or do it in a different way, whatever they're passionate about. If they want to, you know, make a video about it, or if they want to write a song about it, or even just something as simple as, well, send me a formal email, and I can start to gauge my your understanding from that. So giving them multiple attempts at it. But you want to use the most recent evidence of their learning, and try to distance yourself away from means or averages in your grade book, because again, if they were a beginner at the beginning of the term and they're getting it along the way, they shouldn't be penalized. So dropping those early scores and seeing where are they right now. The mode is a good way to do this, and a lot of times if I'm looking to see how well a student knows something, I'll look at the mode, and if it's all over the place, that means I need to do another assessment of some sort to see how far and they've come and where are they at this point in time, and is it accurate. So more than anything, we need to train our students and our parents and administrators that grades are communication. And these are going to be specific to grade level outcomes, the priority ones that we picked. So your grade book should reflect these outcomes. So whatever you've selected, that should be part of your grade book, not the tasks. If there's a system in place that you can avoid posting all the tasks along the way and just really focus on here's where we are according to this specific outcome, then that's going to be a much more accurate portrayal of where the student is with regard to their learning. And then taking a look at the data. Is it meaningful? And quality assessments are key. If the tool you're using is not working, then change it. Tweaks are a good thing. So I tweak my grading system, every year and along the way. So if it doesn't tell me where I need to go next, then I got to change something. Rick Wormley, author of Fair Isn't Always Equal. He has an awesome YouTube channel with little snippets. He is one of my grading heroes. And he says that grades are determined by a teacher's professional opinion. So you really count. You're the professional, and you're basing it on the child's performance and not a mathematical calculation. So as long as you are giving credible and accurate and defensible grades, you're on the right track. If you are, like at my school, we're not standards-based. So if your school is not standards-based, but you believe strongly in it, I'm going to quickly try to show you a way to incorporate this approach into a traditional grade book. This is like a basic rubric performance descriptor where the levels across the top, the dark green would be going beyond the standard. So competence would be at this third level that the student has the critical elements. If I were to translate these levels into like 100-point scale in a grade book, 100 being, that advanced level, and then 90 being where they are, that they're at the competent level, and then approaching or, getting there, developing 85, 80. And if they're not there yet, like they're a beginner, they have a ways to go, the lowest grade that they would get is a 60. So there are no zeros in this system. And again, if you look back, this is a psychomotor, so a physical skill that they're doing. A knowledge-based performance descriptor would be a little bit different, and then obviously, the SEL stuff, the affective domain is going to look a little bit different as far as your rubric descriptors.
And Adam, I think it's important to also mention that the performance indicators that you've chosen, where you've chosen proficient and competent and developing and not yet, those can vary greatly from school to school as well. But as long as they're effectively communicated into what those terms mean, then it typically works. And then the wow, got it, getting there and not yet is kid friendly, which in my opinion also means it's parent friendly. So, those can vary from school to school.
Absolutely. Yep. And I am sold on the most recent version of mine based on the PE metrics version. So I highly respect the authors of the PE metrics book. So that's kind of where I grabbed some of those, but that might change in a year or two. I might find something better. So that's always up to you and your professional opinion. So if you are translating these grade level outcome scores into a traditional grade or a grade book, here's how I do it. And this is based on the Marzano method. Hopefully this will make sense to some of you, but if you turn your category weight, so you might have categories of your grade level outcomes. If you turn those off and then you establish that each grade level outcome, each priority outcome has the same equal weight. So if you're only doing one assessment, and I encourage you to do multiple assessments, that might be a weight of 1.0. So example might be the most current performance of a performance, skill performance. You might, take that one skill and it just from seeing it once. If there are multiple attempts at learning, maybe it's a performance and a cognitive assessment, you might split that one grade level outcome into a 0.5. And again, if there are three assessments, like a performance, a cognitive assessment, and then a reflection, those can all lend themselves to each grade level outcome being weighted the same way. So this would be like a grade book. And again, I tried to just use one student example, but you can see that the grade level outcomes are listed at the top. Again, I do have a little bit of like the task involved in some of these, but overall, you can see that these particular grade level outcomes all have a weight of 1, except for this one right here, the flag rugby contest or concepts test. It's not a selected outcome. So although it's important, it's not part of the grade, as I mentioned before. Again, skeletal systems concepts, not part of their grade, but important to know. This series of data are heart rate monitor sessions. So I take their top 5 scores, and each one has a weight of 0.20 rather, to give it equal weighting. And again, if I were to look at the SEL standards 4 and 5, I might have how well they cooperate, and I do some peer assessments and reflections to gauge these scores. So playing with the weights to make sure that each grade level outcome carries the same level of importance, equal weight in your grade book is really a priority to do, so that you can paint a clear picture. What I found sometimes, if teachers are more focused on the skill and strategies, the real athletic kids will tend to get higher grades in PE. But for me, I really, when I select my outcomes and my learning opportunities, I come back to the standards 4 and 5 quite often. So that really paints a clear picture of, are they a good teammate? Are they, do they have a positive attitude? Are they going to incorporate this throughout their entire life? So that is what I do to incorporate a standards-based system into a traditional grade book.
Can I add a couple of things onto that? So obviously we talked about assessment quite a lot. Not everything that you assess has to go in the grade book. I think that's a mistake sometimes that we make. You may be doing very informal assessments as you're going along. You might be assessing something that that was not in your big, 4 or 6 or 8 outcomes that you selected. That's okay. Not everything has to go in. You can still give feedback. You can still give opportunities to improve, but don't feel that every single thing that you teach has to be assessed and everything has to be put in that grade book, because it can often be like a kind of Adam said, he's got 2 examples there of where things, he did test them, but they did not count to that overall grade. They can be a stepping stone to get a student to the next level of knowledge, understanding, and so on, but they don't necessarily all have to be reported out or formally assessed on.
Yeah, that's a great tip, Joe. And also, the 3 of us have kind of all taken a deep dive into this, right? But you can choose your comfort level. So maybe you're at the point right now where you're like, you know what? For this fall, all I want to focus on is just coming up with some priority outcomes for my students. Maybe you're comfortable with doing that and adding in some new types of assessments and learning opportunities for your students. Maybe you're already there and you're wanting to take it one step further and you're wanting to convert your grade book. And all of those things are totally okay. And they're all great for students and they're all great for your teaching, and they will transform your program in a really positive way. So, you have to enter this wherever you're comfortable. So we want to thank you for joining us for this session today. Our contact information is on this slide, as well as a link that you can access this entire slide deck, and all of those links will work for you so you can access all of the different resources that we've embedded.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.